The sun hung like a merciless eye over the dusty auction block in Tucson, Arizona, 1876, as Vivian Turner stood with a coarse hemp rope cinched around her slender neck, her green eyes flashing defiance even as her heart pounded with terror. She'd been captured by outlaws after the stagecoach massacre that claimed her father's life 3 days prior, and now found herself being sold to the highest bidder among a crowd of leering men who viewed her as nothing more than property to be owned, used, and discarded. Zachary Zimmerman observed the proceedings from beneath the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat, his jaw tightening as he watched the young woman no more than 20. He guessed being paraded before the crowd like livestock. His calloused hand drifted to the worn leather holster at his hip, fingers brushing against the cool metal of his Colt revolver as righteous anger flooded his veins. 8 years as a Texas Ranger had taught him to control his temper, but some injustices demanded immediate action. $500, a portly man in a sweat-stained shirt called out, eyeing Vivian with undisguised lust. $600, another voice joined in. Vivian's chin remained high despite the rope digging into her flesh. 3 days of captivity had left her dress torn and dirty, her auburn hair tangled but her spirit unbroken. She'd promised her dying father she would survive, and survive she would, though how, she couldn't yet fathom. $700 for the pretty little thing, called a grizzled miner, his gold tooth glinting in the harsh sunlight. Zachary stepped forward, his spurs jingling against the hard-packed earth. $1,000, he announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent crowd. The auctioneer, a rat-faced man with tobacco-stained teeth, grinned greedily. Sold to the gentleman in the black hat. As Zachary approached, Vivian assessed him warily. Tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a storm-tossed sea, he didn't look like the other men. There was something in his gaze, a steadiness, perhaps that kept her from completely succumbing to despair. "I'll take her now," Zachary said, counting out the money and handing it to the auctioneer. The rat-faced man chuckled, handing over the end of the rope. "She's a spirited one. You might need to break her in." Zachary's expression remained impassive as he accepted the rope, but his eyes hardened to granite. Without acknowledging the comment, he led Vivian away from the auction block, through the crowd, and toward his tethered horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion that stood 17 hands high. Only when they were clear of the crowd did he speak, his voice low and urgent. "I'm not what you think, miss. My name is Zachary Zimmerman. I was a Texas Ranger until recently, and I aim to help you." Vivian stared at him, hope and suspicion warring within her. "Why should I believe you?" Instead of answering, Zachary reached into his boot and withdrew a knife. Vivian flinched, but he merely raised the blade to the rope around her neck, cutting it with one swift motion. The hemp fell away, leaving an angry red welt in its place. "First things first," he said, his voice gentle now. "No person should wear a rope like that." He gathered the severed rope from the ground, led her to his horse, and helped her mount before swinging up behind her. They rode in silence through the town, past saloons and brothels and general stores, until they reached the outskirts. There, beside a small creek, Zachary dismounted and helped Vivian down. Without a word, he built a small fire, then ceremoniously cast the rope into the flames. They both watched as the hemp blackened, curled, and was consumed by fire. "That's one injustice put right," Zachary said quietly. "I only wish I could undo the rest of what's been done to you." Vivian's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "You paid $1,000 to free a stranger." Zachary's weathered face softened slightly. "I've seen too much evil in this world to stand by and watch another innocent suffer." He paused, then added, "Where were you headed when the outlaws took you?" "San Francisco," Vivian replied, her voice catching. "My father and I were going to start a new life there after my mother passed. He didn't survive the attack." "I'm sorry for your loss," Zachary said, genuine compassion in his eyes. "I lost my parents when I was young. I know something of that pain." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the crackling of the fire as it consumed the last of the rope. "What will you do now?" Zachary finally asked. Vivian looked toward the horizon, the vastness of her uncertain future stretching before her. "I have an aunt in San Francisco. I should still try to reach her, though I have nothing now, no money, no belongings." Zachary nodded thoughtfully. "I'm heading to California myself. Planning to settle somewhere quiet, maybe start a ranch." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I can escort you to San Francisco if you wish. These are dangerous territories for a woman traveling alone." Vivian studied him, searching for any sign of deception or hidden motives. Finding none, she nodded slowly. "I would be grateful for your protection, Mr. Zimmerman." "Zach," he corrected with the ghost of a smile, "out here formalities don't count for much." "Then I'm Vivian," she replied, offering a tentative smile in return. As the sun began to set, painting the western sky in shades of gold and crimson, Zachary helped Vivian mount his horse again. "We'll make camp a few miles from here," he explained. "Then tomorrow we'll head west toward California. It's a long journey, several weeks at least." "I'm stronger than I look," Vivian assured him. Zachary's eyes crinkled at the corners. "I don't doubt that for a minute, Miss Vivian. Not for a minute." They rode until dusk settled over the landscape, finally stopping beside a small stream sheltered by cottonwood trees. Zachary efficiently set up camp, building a fire and preparing a simple meal of beans, jerky, and coffee. As they ate, Vivian broke the comfortable silence. "Why did you leave the Rangers?" Zachary's expression grew distant. "I joined up believing I could make a difference, bring justice to lawless places, and for a time I think I did." He stared into the flames. "But the last year something changed. Orders came down that didn't sit right with me, protecting wealthy ranchers' interests over poor farmers, turning a blind eye to how the railroad companies were treating Chinese workers." He took a sip of his coffee before continuing. "The final straw was being ordered to clear some Comanche families from land that a banker wanted. Those people weren't hurting anyone, they were just trying to survive. I refused the order and turned in my badge that same day." Vivian nodded thoughtfully. "It takes courage to stand by your principles when it costs you something." "Maybe," Zachary conceded, "or maybe it's just stubbornness." His eyes met hers across the fire. "What about you? What's your story?" Vivian sighed, setting aside her tin plate. "My father was a schoolteacher in Boston. After my mother died of consumption last winter, he couldn't bear to stay in the house where every corner held memories of her. He heard of teaching opportunities in San Francisco, so we sold everything and headed west." Her voice faltered. "We were 3 days into the journey from Tucson when the outlaws attacked our stagecoach." "Were they Hollister's gang?" Zachary asked sharply. Vivian nodded, surprised. "Yes, that was the name I heard them use." "How did you know?" "I've been tracking them," Zachary admitted. "They've been terrorizing stagecoach routes across 3 territories. The Rangers wouldn't cross jurisdictional lines to go after them, so I decided to pursue them myself after I left the force." "You're hunting them?" Vivian asked, a mixture of hope and fear in her voice. "I am," Zachary confirmed. "They need to be brought to justice, not just for what they did to you and your father, but for dozens of other innocent lives they've destroyed." Vivian was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, she looked up, determination hardening her delicate features. "I want to help you find them." Zachary's expression grew troubled. "That's not a path you want to take, Vivian. Vengeance changes a person and rarely for the better." "It's not vengeance I seek," she insisted. "It's justice the same as you." Zachary studied her face in the flickering firelight. "We'll talk more about this tomorrow. For now, you should rest. You've been through a terrible ordeal." He offered her his bedroll, insisting he would be comfortable enough with his saddle as a pillow. As Vivian settled in for the night, she watched Zachary checking his weapons one last time before stretching out on the other side of the fire. "Thank you," she said softly, "for saving me today." Zachary tipped his hat slightly in acknowledgement. "Get some sleep, Vivian. We have a long road ahead." As she drifted towards sleep, Vivian realized that for the first time since the stagecoach attack, she felt safe. Despite the uncertainty that lay before her, despite the grief that still clutched at her heart, she had found an unexpected ally in this quiet, principled man. Morning came with the gentle cooing of mourning doves and the distant yip of coyotes. Vivian woke to find Zachary already up, brewing coffee over a freshly built fire. "You're an early riser," she observed, pushing herself upright and attempting to tame her tangled hair with her fingers. "Old habits," he replied, pouring her a cup of the strong, black coffee. "Rangers learn to function on little sleep." They shared a breakfast of hardtack biscuits spread with molasses before breaking camp. As Zachary saddled his horse, Vivian broached the subject that had been on her mind since their conversation the previous night. "I meant what I said about helping you find Hollister's gang," she said firmly. "I'm not seeking revenge, but I do want to see them answer for their crimes." Zachary secured the cinch on his saddle before turning to face her. "Tracking outlaws is dangerous work, Vivian. I can't in good conscience put you in harm's way." "I'm already in their path," she countered. "They've already taken everything from me. And I might be able to identify them to testify against them." Zachary considered this, his expression thoughtful. "I aim to deliver them to proper authorities, not to dispense frontier justice." "As do I," Vivian assured him. "My father believed in the rule of law above all else. He would want his killers to face a judge and jury, not a vigilante's bullet." Finally, Zachary nodded. "Very well, but you'll follow my lead without question when it comes to safety." "Agreed, agreed," Vivian said, relief evident in her voice. They set out westward, following the stagecoach route toward California. Zachary kept a vigilant eye on their surroundings, alert for any sign of danger. They rode side by side when the trail allowed, and Vivian found herself studying her rescuer when he wasn't looking. There was a quiet strength about Zachary Zimmerman, a steadiness that had nothing to do with physical prowess, though he certainly possessed that as well, with his broad shoulders and powerful build. No, it was something in his character, a moral certainty that guided his actions even when they came at personal cost. "Tell me about your plans in California," Vivian said as they rode, genuinely curious about this man who had risked so much to save her. Zachary's expression lightened somewhat. "There's good land in the Sacramento Valley, fertile soil, plenty of water. I've saved enough to buy a modest spread, raise some cattle, maybe horses too. I've always had a way with horses." "You don't strike me as a man who dreams of a quiet ranching life," Vivian observed. Zachary chuckled, a warm, rich sound that surprised her. "No, what do I strike you as then? Someone who can't abide injustice," she replied honestly. "Someone who steps in when others look away." His smile faded, replaced by a more solemn expression. "Perhaps. But a man can't fight the world's wrongs forever. Eventually, he needs to build something of his own, something worth protecting." They rode in companionable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Around midday, they stopped beside a small creek to rest and water the horse. While Zachary refilled their canteens, Vivian noticed something glinting in the sand. Curious, she knelt and brushed away the earth to reveal a small gold nugget no bigger than her thumbnail. "Zach," she called, excitement in her voice. "Look at this." He came to her side, examining her find with interest. "Well, that's a nice little piece of color." "Is this area known for gold?" she asked, turning the nugget in her palm and marveling at how the sunlight played across its surface. "Not particularly," Zachary replied, "but gold has a way of turning up where you least expect it." He smiled at her. "You should keep it, might bring you luck." Vivian tucked the nugget into her pocket, oddly touched by his suggestion. "My father always said we make our own luck through preparation and perseverance." "Your father sounds like a wise man," Zachary said, helping her to her feet. "He was," Vivian agreed softly. "I wish you could have met him." They continued their journey, making good progress through the afternoon. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they approached a small settlement little more than a trading post, a livery stable, and a saloon. "We'll stop here for the night," Zachary decided. You could use a proper meal and a real bed. The trading post doubled as a crude inn, offering 3 small rooms for travelers. Zachary secured 2 of them, along with hot baths and a hot meal for them both. Vivian nearly wept at the prospect of being clean again. After her bath, dressed in a simple cotton dress the trader's wife had been kind enough to sell her at a reasonable price, Vivian joined Zachary for supper. The hot stew and fresh bread were the most delicious things she'd tasted in what felt like forever. I've been asking around, Zachary said quietly, leaning across the rough-hewn table. Hollister's gang was spotted 2 days ago heading west. They're not far ahead of us. Vivian's heart quickened. What's your plan? We'll continue to California as planned, but keep our eyes and ears open. If we get wind of them planning another robbery, we might be able to alert local law enforcement in time to catch them in the act. And if we don't, Zachary's expression was grim. Then we keep tracking them. They'll slip up eventually, men like that always do. Later, as Vivian settled into her narrow bed, she found sleep elusive despite her exhaustion. Her mind kept returning to the rope around her neck, the terror of standing on that auction block, and the unexpected salvation that had come in the form of Zachary Zimmerman. She touched her neck, feeling the tender skin where the rope had chafed. Then her fingers found the small gold nugget in her pocket, and she clutched it like a talisman. Perhaps luck had already found her in the most unexpected of ways. Days turned into weeks as they journeyed westward. They settled into a comfortable routine, traveling by day and making camp each evening. Zachary taught Vivian how to build a fire, how to read animal tracks, and how to shoot his spare revolver, skills she absorbed eagerly. "You're a natural," he said with admiration after she hit a can placed on a tree stump from 20 paces. Vivian lowered the gun, a small smile of satisfaction playing at her lips. "My father believed girls should know how to defend themselves. He taught me the basics years ago, though Mother never approved." "Your father was ahead of his time," Zachary remarked, taking the revolver from her and checking it before returning it to its holster. As they continued their journey, they passed through small settlements and lonely stretches of wilderness. Each night around the campfire, they shared more of their stories, Zachary speaking of his childhood on a small farm in Missouri, Vivian recounting tales of her education in Boston. Gradually, Vivian became aware of a shift in their relationship. What had begun as a rescue and an offer of protection was evolving into something deeper, a friendship based on mutual respect and growing affection. For his part, Zachary found himself increasingly drawn to Vivian's quiet strength and quick mind. She faced the hardships of their journey without complaint, adapted quickly to life on the trail, and maintained her dignity despite the circumstances that had brought them together. One evening, as they sat beside their campfire in a grove of juniper trees, Zachary found himself watching Vivian as she mended a tear in her dress, her slender fingers working deftly with needle and thread. "You're staring," she observed without looking up. Caught, Zachary cleared his throat. "Sorry, I was just thinking." "About what?" she asked, finishing her stitch and meeting his gaze. "About how you've changed since that day in Tucson," he admitted. "You were strong even then, but now you've grown into the wilderness, it suits you." Vivian set aside her mending, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "I could say the same about you, Zach. When I first met you, I thought you were just a man with a mission. Now I see there's much more to you than that." Their eyes held across the fire, something unspoken passing between them. Zachary opened his mouth to respond, but the moment was shattered by the distant sound of gunshots. Both of them were instantly alert, Zachary reaching for his rifle as Vivian grabbed the revolver he'd given her. "That came from up ahead," Zachary said, his voice low. "Might be another stagecoach robbery." They quickly doused their fire and mounted Zachary's horse, riding cautiously toward the sound. As they crested a hill, they saw the stagecoach below, surrounded by 5 men on horseback. Even from a distance, Vivian recognized the leader, a tall man with a distinctive scar running down the left side of his face. "That's Hollister," she whispered, her heart racing. "The one in the black coat." Zachary assessed the situation with a ranger's trained eye. The stagecoach driver and guard were already dead, their bodies sprawled on the ground. The passengers were being dragged from the coach, 2 women and a man in a banker's suit. "We need to find the local sheriff," Zachary said grimly. "There's a town about 5 miles ahead. We can't take on all 5 of them ourselves." But even as he spoke, one of the outlaws seized the younger of the 2 female passengers, a girl who couldn't have been more than 16, and began dragging her toward the trees despite her terrified screams. "We can't wait," Vivian said urgently, raising her revolver. "That girl needs help now." Zachary hesitated only a second before nodding. "You're right." He handed her his rifle. "You're a good shot. Find cover on that ridge and provide suppressing fire. I'll circle around and come at them from behind." They separated, Vivian positioning herself among the rocks on the ridge while Zachary disappeared into the trees. She steadied the rifle against a boulder, taking careful aim at the outlaw who was dragging the young woman away from the stagecoach. Taking a deep breath, Vivian squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder, and below, the outlaw dropped to one knee as her bullet found his thigh. The young woman broke free, running toward the trees. The other outlaws wheeled around, searching for the source of the shot. Vivian fired again, deliberately striking the ground near Hollister's horse, causing it to rear in panic. From the opposite side of the clearing came the sound of Zachary's revolver as he picked off another outlaw with deadly accuracy. Caught in crossfire and unable to determine how many attackers they faced, the remaining outlaws scattered for cover. Vivian continued firing at strategic intervals, careful to conserve ammunition. Below, she could see Zachary working his way closer to where Hollister had taken cover behind the stagecoach. Suddenly, one of the outlaws spotted her position and opened fire. Bullets whined off the rocks around her, forcing Vivian to duck lower. When she raised her head again, she saw Hollister making a break for his horse. Taking careful aim, she fired. The bullet caught Hollister's mount in the flank, causing it to collapse and pinning the outlaw leader beneath it. Before he could free himself, Zachary was there, his revolver trained on Hollister's head. The remaining outlaws, seeing their leader captured, fled into the gathering dusk. Vivian scrambled down from her position, rushing to join Zachary as he secured Hollister with the man's own handcuffs. "You're under arrest for murder, robbery, and kidnapping," Zachary announced, his voice carrying the authority of his former position. Hollister spat on the ground. "You're no lawman anymore, Zimmerman. I heard you turned in your badge." "He may not wear a badge," Vivian said, stepping forward with the rifle still in her hands, "but he carries the law in his heart, which is more than you'll ever understand." The outlaw's eyes narrowed as he recognized her. "Well, if it ain't the schoolteacher's daughter. Thought we'd seen the last of you when we sold you to that slaver in Tucson." "The only thing sold that day was your chance for redemption," Vivian replied steadily. "And now you'll face justice for my father and all your other victims." They helped the shaken stagecoach passengers and brought Hollister to the town of Pine Creek, where the local sheriff took him into custody. By morning, wanted posters for the other gang members were being distributed, and Zachary provided detailed descriptions to aid in their capture. As they prepared to continue their journey the next day, the sheriff approached them on the steps of his office. "You two make quite a team," he observed. "There's a standing reward for Hollister, $500. It's yours by rights." Zachary glanced at Vivian before replying. "We'll take half. Give the rest to the families of the men killed yesterday." The sheriff nodded approvingly. "The circuit judge will be through these parts in about 3 weeks. If you want to testify, it would strengthen the case considerably." Vivian and Zachary exchanged looks. "We're headed to California," Zachary explained, "but I suppose we could delay our journey." "My aunt will understand," Vivian agreed. "Justice is worth waiting for." They found lodging in Pine Creek, a small but growing town with a general store, church, schoolhouse, and several saloons. As the days passed, Vivian found herself wondering what would happen once they reached California. Would they go their separate ways? The thought brought an unexpected pain to her heart. One evening, as they walked along the creek that gave the town its name, Zachary seemed unusually quiet. "Is something troubling you?" Vivian asked gently. He stopped, turning to face her in the golden light of sunset. "I've been thinking about what comes next. After the trial, after we reach California," Vivian's heart quickened. "And what have you concluded?" "That I don't want to say goodbye when we reach San Francisco," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "These past weeks with you, they've changed me, Vivian." She stepped closer, drawn by the sincerity in his storm-gray eyes. "They've changed me too, Zach." "I still want that ranch in the Sacramento Valley," he continued, taking her hands in his. "But I find I want something else even more now." "What's that?" she whispered, though she thought she knew the answer. "A partner, someone to build a life with." He took a deep breath. "I know it's sudden, and you have plans of your own," but Vivian silenced him by rising on tiptoe and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Zachary's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Vivian smiled up at him. "I was hoping you'd ask." "Is that a yes?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "It's a beginning," she replied softly. "We've both seen how quickly life can change, how precious each moment is. I don't want to waste any more time wondering what might have been." They were married 2 days later in Pine Creek's small church, with the sheriff and his wife as witnesses. The local seamstress helped Vivian alter a ready-made dress, and Zachary splurged on a new shirt for the occasion. As they exchanged vows, Vivian reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. From the terror of the auction block with a rope around her neck, to standing beside this honorable man who had cut her bonds and set her free not just physically, but in spirit as well. The trial came 3 weeks later as promised. With Vivian and Zachary's testimony, along with that of the stagecoach survivors, Hollister was sentenced to hang for his crimes. 2 of his gang members had been captured in the meantime, ensuring that justice would be served. As autumn painted the landscape in shades of gold and crimson, Zachary and Vivian finally continued their journey to California. They traveled at a leisurely pace, no longer pursued by vengeance or fear, but drawn forward by dreams of the future they would build together. When they reached the Sacramento Valley, they found a parcel of land that seemed made for them, 200 acres with a creek running through it, rolling pastures for cattle, and fertile soil for crops. The cabin was small but solid, with room to expand as their family grew. They named their ranch New Beginnings, a testament to the unexpected twists of fate that had brought them together. The rope that had once symbolized Vivian's captivity had been transformed by fire into ash and memory, leaving behind only the unbreakable bond between 2 souls who had found each other against all odds. 5 years later, their ranch had prospered beyond their expectations. A larger house stood where the cabin had been, with a wide porch where Vivian often sat in the evenings, watching Zachary teach their young son, Thomas, how to ride his pony. Their daughter, Elizabeth, not yet 2, played at Vivian's feet, her curls the same auburn as her mother's. Sometimes in the quiet moments, Vivian would touch the small gold nugget she kept on a chain around her neck, her first piece of luck in this new land, and remember the journey that had brought her here. From the nightmare of the auction block to the dream of this life they'd built together, it had been a road of both hardship and joy. But most of all, she remembered the moment when a stranger had cut the rope from her neck and burned it to ash, setting her free to find not just safety, but love. And in the vast, wild territory that was their life together, that love continued to grow, as enduring as the mountains and as boundless as the western sky.